All right, so welcome back to the next part of your theory lessons. So we've already learned how major scales are built, right? They follow a certain pattern: whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. You divide an octave up by that major scale, and you'll get a major scale pattern. We kind of learned one application to that was to say, okay, yeah, you can play just C major, from a C to a C. But we also learned we could take the notes from C major and use it to map out, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. All the notes on the fretboard, which is super, super nice. And again, you learn all the C major notes, you'll kind of know all the notes by default, because if you know this is an A, you know this is A flat, you know that's A sharp. Okay? We also learned, hey, here's a certain finger pattern to play, one way of many, to play a major scale. Great pattern to know. It's your major scale 1 shape. Okay, awesome. Right off the bat, you could use that to play different scales. Like, if you play that same pattern, okay, you get an A major scale if you started it on an A. So all these patterns are movable. But I don't want you to get too bogged down with that quite yet. I just kind of want to stay in the world of C major for a while because we have some other things to kind of cover. And we'll save moving through different keys for a little bit down the road, okay? So after we've learned our major scale shape, we realize, hey, I'm going to start doing some work. You don't have to have mastered this yet, but you're going to start doing some work, a couple strings a day up and down the neck to learn the fretboard. Then let's move on to another concept altogether, which is chords, okay, harmony. And what chords are they're notes that you stack on top of each other that sound generally good together. Okay, so for the most part in our more basic music, we're talking about thirds. Most music you're talking about stacking thirds on top of each other. What's a third? Okay, it's an interval. So let's understand intervals a little bit in music. So in math, like 2 to 4 is 2, or 1 to 3 is 2, but in music 1 to 3 is 3. We call it like a third. I know that's kind of confusing, so I'll say it again a different way. So in music, if I go from a C to a D, right? I don't say that's a 1 because I went up 1 note. I say that's a second because you count the note you came from as well. So if I move from a C to a D, that's a second. If I move from a C to an E, C, D, E, that's called a third. Okay? If I move from an E to a G, E, F, G, that's also a third. Okay? So chords come in all kinds of different varieties, but the most basic ones we need to know first are called triads. Tri for 3, and that just means there's 3 different notes in the chord. So for example, a C chord would have C, D, E, F, G. Every other note, because we're talking thirds, and 3 total notes, C, E, and G. Now, you might say to yourself, wait a second, when I play a C chord, I'm playing like 5 or 6 strings. Okay, that's true, but you're only playing 3 different kinds of notes, right? Here's a C, E, G, C, and E. So you had some doubles in there, okay? So that's a basic triad. Now what we need to know is, well, are there different kinds of triads? And the answer is yes, there's 4 kinds of triads. 4 basic kinds of triads, and 2 of them are very common and 2 are not so common. Okay, so the most widely used are major and minor. And of course, you've heard that and you know that. Like here's an A major chord, and here's an A minor chord. Right, here's a C major, here's a C minor. Okay, so we might know, well, one's supposed to sound happy and one's supposed to sound sad. Major's more upbeat sounding generally, and minor chords are more somber or kind of sad sounding. But what's actually happening when we play those chords? Like what's physically going on? So this is where we need to know a little bit more about intervals than just the number. Okay, so when we're talking about intervals like thirds, there's the number, like, hey, is it a second, a third, a fourth, a fifth? But then there's also something called the quality, okay? And that means like, okay, well, was that third a major third or a minor third? Okay, was that second that you played a major second or a minor second? And it sounds confusing, but it's really not that much, okay? And all this is going to be laid out for you in your book on page 6, okay? So, A minor third is when we travel 1.5 steps, and a major third is when the distance between our notes is 2 whole steps. You already know a half step is 1 fret and a whole step is 2 frets. Okay, so if you have like 1.5 steps, for example, like, okay, here's E, half step to F, whole step to G. Okay, so E to G, that is a minor third. Okay, so then E to G sharp, that would be 2 whole steps. Whole step up here, whole step here. Okay, so E to G sharp is a major third. So the basic idea with triads is this. If you start with a major third, you're probably going to be playing a major triad. If you start with a minor third, you're probably going to be playing a minor triad. Okay, the specific formula as it's laid out in the book for you there is major chords, you start with a major third and then you have a minor third on top. Minor triads, it's the opposite. You start with a minor third and then you have a major third on top. The distance between the main note and the outside note, which by the way, that's called a fifth, like a C chord, C, D, E, F, G. Well, C to G is a fifth. The fifth doesn't change, you know, if it's a major chord or a minor chord, right? But the third, that's the note that matters to decide if a chord is major or minor, all right? So here's your exercise, and you might want to do this on a piece of paper. It doesn't mean you're going to be reading music, okay? You can do it reading music, but you don't have to. You could just write the English, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, okay? And you know whole, half, whole, half is the pattern, right? That would be in between those notes, right? Then you take each starting note from your scale, like a C or a D or an E, and you just stack notes above it, every other note coming from the scale. So for example, if I had a C chord, right, or if I was in the key of C, my first chord would be a C chord, and just from the, looking at the page, I go, oh, every other note, E, G. So you can write in C, E, G, okay, and that will give you a major third, because you could look and see, oh yeah, that first third, that was 2 whole steps, the second third was 1.5, okay? Hopefully that makes sense, and again, it's all in the diagrams for you as well to help you kind of work your way through it. And so then if you did that for every note in the C scale, there's only 7 different notes, right? You'd end up with a certain set of notes in your chords. All the notes in the chords coming from the scale. So no sharps or flats in this case, because C major has no sharps or flats. So you'd have like C, E, G, D, F, A, E, G, B, F, A, C, G, B, D, A, C, E, B, D, F, and then back to C, E, G, okay? So that's a really good thing to do. Pause the video, take a look at the diagrams, you can look at it. I think it's best to kind of copy it out. Again, you're not reading music, it doesn't have to be music notation, it can be just in English. Write it across, stack up the notes, and look at the thirds, okay? And say, hey, what do I got? Major third and then a minor third, or the opposite? Minor third and then a major third, okay? When you start with a major third, you have a major triad. When you start with a minor third, you have a minor triad. You're going to find one exception to that in your major scale. When you build your thirds off of the note B, the 7th note in the scale, you get 2 minor thirds in a row. You get B, D, F, every other note, B, C, D, E, F. B to D is a minor third, D to F is a minor third, okay? That's an unusual type of triad. There's 1 per every major key, and it's called a diminished triad when you have 2 thirds in a row. There's another unusual chord that's called a augmented chord when you have 2 major thirds in a row. Like here's C major, C, E, G, right? And then if I raise the 5 to a G sharp, right? Sounds like something John Lennon would use. Anyways, that's C, E, G sharp, C. Okay, well, C to E, 2 whole steps, E to G sharp, that's 2 whole steps. Oh, okay. So that's another unusual triad. That's called an augmented triad when you have 2 major thirds. Augmented triads you don't get naturally in a major scale. That's kind of you have to kind of force that one out. Okay, so your next step in your theory work is to write out a C major scale. Okay, I know all this sounds confusing when I talk you through it, but once you've read over the PDF enough and done the work of just copying things out, it'll start to sink in. Okay, so you write out your C major scale, you stack up your notes, okay, and then you kind of see what you have. Do I have a major third, then a minor third? If I do, then that's a major triad. Do I have a minor third first and then a major third? If I do, that's a minor triad. And then you could write below and say what actually you ended up with. C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, B diminished, back to C major. And those would be the basic triads you'd end up with, okay? So that's going to be a little bit of a little bit of work if you haven't done this kind of thing before, but what we're going to build our way towards is, understanding the relationship between chords and scales. And you might say to yourself, well, again, why do I need to know this stuff? Because you're going to want to know how chords are built and how they relate to scales when you get into more advanced soloing. Just looking at a chord jam and just knowing what you can do to play on top of it, okay, without even having to fish around looking for things. Okay, it's very useful. Okay, so that's that. Once you've gone ahead and done all that work, we could also kind of apply this to the neck a little bit, and we could say, okay, well, we could learn some bar chord shapes if you don't already know them. These are really important chord shapes to know. So you have like a fifth string major shape and a fifth string minor shape. Okay, let's take a quick look at where these guys, kind of come from or kind of relate to some maybe open position chords you already know. So I already played these two chords earlier. This is an A major, right? We have A, there's A, C sharp, E, A, E, A, C sharp, E. A to C sharp, major third, C sharp to E, minor third. That's why it's a major chord. And then if I drop that C sharp down to a C, okay, well now I have an A minor, A to C, minor third, C to E, major third. A major, A minor. Well, if you think about it, this could be a bar chord, but I don't need to put my finger over here, because the nut is doing that job for me, right? But then, if I move that shape up here, like here's the same shape. If I go up a fret, to get the exact kind of relationship between the notes, I have to put my bar down to like a capo to replace what the nut is doing, right? And so then this would be B flat major, B major, oh, here's C major, okay? And you can see my pointer finger is on the C, and then my other fingers spill out the rest of the chord. Okay, so if you didn't already know it, you probably did, but this is your fifth string major shape, okay? Now, just like scales, most people learn the shape, but they don't bother to dig in and learn the notes, okay? So when you play a chord, and every time you review a chord or learn a new chord, really, really good habit to get in, so you start to learn your fretboard really well, is to say what you're actually doing. So when you play this, what are you playing? Here's a C bar chord. Maybe some of you play it like this, and don't play the top string, or I sometimes do this weird thing with my pinky, so I can use my other fingers for bass or whatever. But any which way you slice it, if we look at at least the inside four strings, maybe we add the top string, which we more easily do by using this A major style shape. You're playing C, G, C, E, G. You want to know that. You want to see the notes that are happening in your chord and not just have a memorized shape, okay? There's C, G, C, E, G. What is that? Okay, that's the root. G is the fifth. The C is the octave. The E is the third. And the G is the fifth again. Okay? So when you learn a chord shape, take a little time, or even just review a chord shape, take a little time to say the numbers and the letters. I know it seems burdensome, but it'll help you in the long run. Okay, so that's that. And then a minor shape, we would just flip it around, right? And you'd have everything the same except the third got lowered. That's the difference between a major triad and a minor triad. So now you have C, G, C, E flat, G. Okay, so those are our two shapes. They're in your diagram. Two most important fifth string bar chord shapes, major and minor. If you haven't already memorized them, go ahead and memorize them. Okay, so now let's kind of apply that to C major. We don't have to worry about the B diminished for now, but let's play all the other chords. So if I start here on a C, well, maybe not all of them, we might run out of space, but we'll see. C major. Here's my D, right? So I use my minor shape because we learned from our theory that the 2 chord is D minor. Okay, D, A, D, F, A, and it'll always be the same numbers. Root, 5th, octave, 3rd, 5th. Just the 3rd sometimes is major and sometimes it's minor. E, we should have figured out from writing it out on the page. Oh, it's going to be E minor. Okay, E, B, E, G, B. Okay, again, always root, 5th, octave, 3rd, 5th, minor 3rd in this case. Next chord, F. Half step up to F. We can go back to our major shape, however you want to play it. And you have your root, your 5th, your octave, and your 3rd. And that's F, C, F, A. Or you can play it like this and get the C on top. After that, you've got your G major, however you want to play it, with your G, D, G, B. And then the very last chord, very hard to play on acoustic, much easier on an electric. You've got your A minor in this position, right? Okay, so mapping out some 5th string chords. Really hard to play that A minor, but you might have a cutaway, and then that makes it pretty easy. If not, you can just play it down here. And you've got all your basic triads except for the B, okay? So, make sure you have your major and minor, at least your major and your minor bar chords on the 5th string memorized, and you use your theory knowledge to kind of see. You know, okay, you can see those C major scale chords, right? And one thing that's kind of fun to do that songwriters do all the time is sometimes they just goof around, use their ear and just kind of play through. You know, you can just kind of play around with those C major bar chords and just kind of come up with combinations of chords that are kind of fun for you to play around with. Okay, so that's another application of our theory to the guitar. We built our triads, and then we saw, okay, in a C scale, and this is good to memorize, the 1, 4, and 5 chords are always major of any major scale. Okay, so in C, it's C, D, E, F, and G will be your major chords. The 2, 3, and 6 chords were minor, and that will be true for every single major scale. Also, 2, 3, and 6 are always minor. So in the case of C, that's D, E, and A are going to be minor. And the 7 chords, that weird, unusual one, which, you know, if you want to memorize the shape, great. You know, there's other ways to play it, but that's that unusual diminished. And it is not used particularly commonly, especially with songwriters. Not that it doesn't happen, it's just uncommon. Okay? So we learned the theory, we built our major scale, we stacked the notes from the major scale, we understood what major triads are and minor triads. You know, the formula, major third, minor third, that's a major triad. Minor third, major third, that's a minor triad. And then we used the finger patterns, like, hey, this is a major shape, this is a major shape, this is a major shape, this is the minor shape. And you mapped out your C major chords on the 5th string. Okay? All right, so now let's take a look at some other shapes. Right? We have the 6th string major and minor bar chords. Again, you know, if this is new, then awesome, you're learning these bar chords. If it's review, then there's still some things to get out of it, which are going to be making sure that you take a little extra time that you probably haven't taken before to say the notes and the numbers in your shapes, okay? And also maybe to apply it to, like, you know, a particular key, right? So let's cruise through some major and minor shapes for the 6th string. For the 6th string major, we've got a bar across all 6 strings. Then we have our 3rd and 4th fingers on the next set of strings. Okay, 2nd finger above that. Okay, so it's the same shape as a 5th string minor chord, but on the 6th string, it's a major shape. And that's because of the way the guitar is tuned. Not all the strings are tuned the same. But we don't need to worry about that too much right now. Okay, how did I know how to find C? Well, oh yeah, that single string playing work that we did earlier, mapping out the notes, right? Another great application of that is, of course, when you're playing your bar chords, it's very easy to find different bar chords if you know, hey, okay, there's G, there's A, there's B, if you know where everything is, G, A, B, C, D, E, it's easy, A, C, D, F, G, A. It's easy to find the bar chords that you want if you know the notes of the fretboard. Anyways, here's 8th fret C. This is a major shape, okay? So again, great to go through C, G, C, E, G, C, root 5th octave, 3rd 5th octave. So of course, memorize the shape, then know the numbers and the letters. Minor, you would just pick up your 2nd finger, okay? But let's save that for like one of our next chords. So here's C major, here's the F major, right? Here's G major, and here's C. So that's kind of fun to play with. Okay, all the major chords, the 1, 4, and 5. Right? Okay, what about the minor chords? We know it's D, E, and A, the 2, 3, and 6. There's D minor. Just take your 2 up, and you've got still root, 5th octave, 3rd, 5th octave. Right? In this case, it's D, A, D, F, A, D. Right? You got E minor. Again, very hard on an acoustic to get that bar chord in there. So you can just play like the open version and realize, oh yeah, it's the same as that 6th string minor shape. I just don't need to put my bar down because the nut does it for me. Right? And then here's A minor. So you can cruise through and play the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Right? Of your C major chords on 6th string bar chords. And same thing, you can goof around. That wasn't anything too pretty. I'm just making, random kind of jumps to different chords. But you can goof around, and maybe just by goofing around, you can do something that you come up with. Oh, I like that. C, A minor, F, to G, right? So make sure you can play all of your C major triads, with the exception of the B diminished. If you don't want to mess around with that, you don't have to. But make sure you can play all of your other C major triads on the 6th string bar chord shapes. And maybe just goof around. And maybe you'll come up with an order of chords that you kind of like for a jam or do some songwriting, who knows. But you're also just kind of mapping out shapes and chords on the guitar. And again, as you cruise through, at least once through all of your chords, whatever shape you're on, G major say, make sure you can say G, D, G, B, D, G, root 5th octave, 3rd, 5th octave, A minor, A, E, A, C, E, A, root 5th octave, 3rd, 5th octave, okay? And that'll help you reinforce the neck. It'll help you kind of see chord shapes with a little bit more detail, and if you have to tweak them later, like raise the 5th or lower a 5th, it won't be so hard to understand that, because you mean the 5th's here, and if I want to kind of raise it, I can do, make the D into a D sharp or whatever. Whereas if you don't know anything except a memorized shape, it's hard to tweak things if you don't know the basics, right? That's kind of one of the rules of thumb. Okay, so now we've dug into basic triads, and you've kind of learned how these basic triads are built from your major scale. They relate to the major scale in this certain pattern, like 1, 4s, and 5s are always going to be major chords. 2, 3, and 6 are going to be minor chords. And we've applied that information to the guitar with 2 common types of chords, which are 5th string bar chords and 6th string bar chords. So if any of this is really challenging, like read the book over some more, or rewatch the video, or spend more time just goofing around in the chords. I know I'm kind of going kind of fast through all of this. So take as much time as you need, whether it's a 5th string, or 6th string. And just make sure you can easily find the right shape, the right chord type, the right root. You just know your C major triads up and down the neck as 5th string chords and 6th string chords. Okay? All right, well, great job, and let's take a little break, and I'll see you in the next section.